Hello from at least 6 feet away. My name is Jonathan Meyerson Katz. I'm a journalist and the author of The Big Truck That Went By, How the World Came to Save Haiti and Left Behind a Disaster. You may have seen my journalism in places such as Mother Jones, Slate, the New York Times and the New York Times Magazine, Politico, The Atlantic, a lot of other places. Before all of that, I was a foreign correspondent for the Associated Press. I also wrote about cover-ups at the CDC. I have a lot of personal experience. I was actually the journalist who broke the story back in 2010 that United Nations peacekeepers were responsible for bringing cholera to Haiti. This is day 19 of my self-isolation. My wife and I started self-isolating from the coronavirus, I think a little earlier than at least a lot of our neighbors here in Central Virginia, in large part because I have a lot of experience covering epidemics and natural disasters in general. And I had a sense from early on, I think, that this had the potential to be a really, really big deal. And that it was going to ultimately require the actions of just a lot of individual people to contain it, in large part because our leaders have failed us. Disaster doesn't happen the way that most of us think. Most of us look at disaster as a momentary event. It sort of comes out of nowhere, and then we have to sort of deal with the consequences, whatever they may be. But disaster experts have a different way of looking at it. They look at disaster as a series of stages. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, for instance, talks about a cycle. You've got the preparation stage, you have the response stage, you have the recovery stage, and then you have mitigation. And then once mitigation is over, you go back into preparedness for the next disaster. Preparedness in this case is where our leaders in the United States really failed us. It was the stage where Trump dismantled the National Security Council's pandemic response team. It was when we could have been stockpiling ventilators and personal protective equipment for nurses and doctors and other first responders, including grocery workers and delivery people. The response is what most of us would think of as the disaster, and the disaster hasn't happened yet. We're just getting into the response phase. Everything that we've been going through, the social isolation, the personal anxiety, the toilet paper memes, all of that is really going to be in the long run looked at as before. The real disaster is just starting to happen. It's happening in New York. It's happening in some other parts of the United States, in New Orleans and Detroit. But it's just getting started. If you look at the numbers that, for instance, Dr. Anthony Fauci of the National Institutes of Health and the White House coronavirus response team that he's put forward, they're estimating somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 people dead in the United States, if everything goes well. It's an astounding thing to imagine, and really we can't imagine what that's going to be like. We don't know what the response to that personally and at a societal level is going to be. And that's really the point. We have to keep in mind that the disaster is still in front of us. It is just beginning, and we can't give up now. We can't give up our social distancing. We can't give up these mitigation efforts that we're trying to put in place. Trump's idea that everything's going to be open by Easter or whatever date he's going to propose next, those seem to be kind of fanciful thinking to either placate his base or really to juice the stock market. But they're just going to get people killed. Trump's failed efforts to cover the scale of the initial outbreak in the United States is why such a pervasive economic shutdown is necessary in the first place, and his impatience is only going to make it worse. In any case, I have a lot more to say about this. There will be a lot more to say about this as events unfold in the coming days and weeks and months. I'm working on a book right now about the rise of American empire, the costs of what American power has been, and the way that that's influenced our relationship with the rest of the world. And I think there's going to be a lot of aspects of that are going to come into focus as this disaster continues. If you're interested in hearing more, please feel free to get in touch. I would love to talk more. You know, in general, stay safe, wash your hands, and stay home. Thanks.